Hey y'all, welcome back to another ballistics gel test. Today we're going to be shooting Winchester Deer Season XP 95 grain out of the 243 Winchester. And here's your box for that Winchester Deer Season XP 243 load. Let's go ahead and, well, first of all, let's talk about this box art. Of all the ammo manufacturers, I think Winchester is the most on point with their ammo boxes. If nothing else, the boxes look really cool. So let's go ahead and flip it around and check it out. So here is some promo info on your Deer Season XP load. Up here you can stop, pause, and read all that if you would like. Here's some promo info on the bullet itself. And then down here we do have velocity, trajectory, and energy information. So we will be shooting this out of my 20-inch barreled Winchester Model 70 compact. So we're probably not going to come close to the 3,100 foot per second muzzle velocity. They're probably using a 24-inch barrel or, something else. Who knows? We almost never reach stated velocity no matter what we're shooting it out of, per usual with factory ammo velocity specs. But anyway, there you go. And this is advertised as for whitetail, blacktail, and mule deer, and we'll see how it performs. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at the ammo itself. Here it is. I've already fired quite a few rounds of this stuff, so let's take a look here. It's just a 243 load. Looks pretty good. It's got that big old giant polymer tip that the Deer Season XP bullets have. Let's shoot it and see what happens. And my test rifle today is my Winchester Model 70 Featherweight Compact, chambered in 243 Winchester, of course. It's got a 20-inch barrel. Up top, I've got a Leopold FX2 6-power scope. And coming on back, I've got one of my handmade leather cartridge cuffs. I've got 243 stamped right in it. Check out my website, masonleather.com. It will be linked in the description and the pinned comment. I would absolutely love to make you one. And coming over the other side, I've got my whitetail deer design.
We'll be taking 3 shots from 100 yards, firing into 10% ballistics gel that has been calibrated to meet the FBI's ballistics testing protocol. And while ballistics gel isn't an exact proxy for big game, it does provide a repeatable medium through which to test various bullets and ammo against each other. After the shots, we'll examine bullet expansion, weight retention, penetration, and velocity. My goal is to provide hunters like you and I with the most objective information possible to help us make the best choice for our particular hunting situation. The ballistics gel in this video has been sourced from Clear Ballistics. You can find a link in the description.
So let's go ahead and shoot it. And we are down at the blocks after shooting that Winchester Deer Season XP 95 grain load out of my 243 Winchester, and we managed to capture 2 bullets, but where are they? So both of them are actually perfectly in the crease right here between the 2 blocks at 15.5 inches. Check this out. So we'll move this block out of the way. And there's one just laying down there on the table, and then there's one right here. There, we'll just pull it out right there. So we got 2 of those bullets. They are expanded. It does look like they retained most of their weight. Of course, we'll weigh them and all that here in a minute. Let's take a look at the front block. So we have pretty good terminal wound cavity starting right here about 1.5 inches in. Going back, if I had to estimate, you know what, I'll just put the tape measure back on it. That way no one calls me a goofball. I'm going to say about the 7.5 inch mark. See how close I was. Oh, what do you know? Perfect. Right there, about the 7.5 inch mark. Almost like I've done this before. Pretty good wound cavity. Better than some of the 243 loads I've tested. And let's take a look at the velocities for that Winchester Deer Season XP 95 grain load out of the 243 Winchester. Our high was 3,030 feet per second. That's the first time I've seen that in a while. The low is 2923, and the average was 2967.
And here are those Winchester Deer Season XP 95 grain bullets from the 243 recovered out of the ballistics gel. Let's go ahead and talk about weight retention. We saw 52 and 53 grains respectively, so we'll round it up for an average of 53 grains. And with a 95 grain bullet starting out, that works out to 55% weight retention. Really no surprise for what is essentially a ballistic tip bullet. And then on to expansion. We saw 0.5 inches and 0.52 inches for an average of 0.51 inches. That works out to 2.1x expansion. That's pretty darn good.
Now on to velocity. Our high velocity was 3,030 feet per second. Our low was 2,923 for an average of 2,967 versus the factory build velocity of 3,100 feet per second. So we came in 133 feet per second slow, which is actually a lot better than I think any other 243 load I've tested so far. I might be wrong, but that's one of the closer ones we've gotten. And keep in mind, I'm shooting these out of a 20-inch barreled carbine, which I think for the 243 is appropriate for real-world testing. There are a lot of people out there using youth rifles and compact rifles chambered in 243. And as I always mention, the 243 is an overbore cartridge, which means a whole lot of gunpowder pushing a fairly small bullet, so you really do need all the barrel length you can get to maximize the velocity. But again, there's a lot of people using compact 243s out there, so I think it's appropriate, and I'm actually rather surprised to have only come in 133 feet per second slow. And then on to penetration. They were exactly the same, 15.5 inches for both bullets. Our average is 15.5. That is on the shallower side of penetration for what I've seen for deer loads from the 243. And considering we got so much expansion and so little really weight retention, it's not really surprising they didn't penetrate deeper. All right, y'all, time for my final thoughts on that Winchester Deer Season XP 95 grain load out of the 243 Winchester. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised overall with how good this did. I've had sort of mixed results with Deer Season XP across calibers. So to see the results this one got, I'm pretty happy with it. I got my cheat sheet. Let's go ahead and hit it. 55% weight retention. Honestly, for the Deer Season XP bullet in the 243, I'm happy with that. It's a ballistic tip bullet. It's going to break up some. It's not going to retain a bunch of his weight. I think for what it is and what it's supposed to do, I think it did okay. It didn't completely fragment and blow apart. There were some mushrooms that held together, so I think it did okay. And not stellar, in my opinion. It's not stellar performance, but for what it is, I think it did okay. That's the point I'm trying to make. And then as far as expansion, it did pretty darn good, 2.1x. That's better than a lot of 243 loads I have tested with that retained expansion, what it is when you actually pull it out of the block. Usually they're in the 1.8, 1.9x range, sometimes a little bit less. So to get over 2x with a 243 is pretty good. And then velocity-wise, this stuff was loaded kind of hot. I could tell when I fired it that these bullets were going faster than a lot of comparable loads. We had 2,967 feet per second on average. We came in 133 feet per second slower than the box spec, which was 3,100 feet per second. Kind of surprising. A lot of 243 loads out of my 20-inch barreled carbine. Remember, I'm shooting this from a 20-inch barrel here, which I think is appropriate in the 243. There's a lot of youth rifles, a lot of compact rifles out there in this caliber, so I think it's appropriate to use a 20-inch barrel for these 243 tests. For a 20-inch barrel, this was going pretty darn fast, and to only come in 133 feet per second slow, this stuff is loaded pretty hot. So I was pleasantly surprised to see how fast this stuff was actually going. And in the one place where this load kind of didn't perform as good as I would have wished it would have was penetration, but again, it makes sense because we had a little bit low weight retention, a little bit more than average expansion, so to get a little bit less penetration only makes sense considering those other factors. It averaged 15.5 inches, and both recovered bullets were right there at that 15.5 inch mark. They're right about the same thing, which is plenty to kill a deer. If you make a good, clean broadside shot, this is definitely going to do the job. I would take pause from taking a less than optimal shot with this particular ammo. Essentially, it's a ballistic tip 243 load. It's a small bullet going really fast with a bullet that's, not going to hold a whole ton of its weight. So I'm not going to be taking a Texas heart shot with this stuff. I would even hesitate from a quartering towards shot. I want like broadside or quartering away would be perfect. Tuck this stuff right behind the shoulder, and yeah, it's going to do the job for you. And then kinetic energy wise, this particular load had the most kinetic energy of any 243 load I've tested so far. With a 95 grain bullet going 2,967 feet per second at the muzzle, that works out to 1,857 foot-pounds of energy. Most 243 hunting loads that I've tested are in the 1,500 to 1,700 foot-pound of energy range. This is substantially higher than that, and that's all due to that velocity, that extra kick that we got with this round. This beat the Privy Partisan load that I just released that video a few days ago. It may have even been within the last week. This beat that one. At that point, that particular load had the most kinetic energy of any 243 load I've tested. This one beat it by a little bit, and it's because it's hot, it's loaded hot, it's going really fast, it's going to hit hard. If you've used this particular load, this Winchester Deer Season XP 243 load on game, let me and everybody else know in the comments how it did for you. Hey, if you enjoy these videos, check out my website masonleather.com and get yourself some leather gear handmade by me just for you. I've been handcrafting leather gear for hunters for over a decade, and I would love to make you something. The link is in the video description. And check out my channel for more hunting ammo ballistics gel tests. I have some big news. Lots of you have emailed me or commented how much value you get out of my videos. And you've asked me, how can you be a part of this and help support the channel? Well, I got to work and now I have a way. I've created a Patreon account where you can join me in helping our fellow hunters. Click the link in this video's description and watch my Patreon welcome video, where I describe to you how your help will impact this channel and our community of hunters as a whole. And when you join me on Patreon, you'll get a lot more than I can give you here on YouTube. You'll have to go watch that welcome video linked in the description to find out the details. I'll see you there.